Hello everyone, I'm Shine Tang from the University of Chicago. Here we're seeing a few videos. Hey Jean, you want to let us know what's going on here?
Hi everyone, my name is Gene Kim. And on the screen you're seeing user studies, participants from our user study completing a variety of different tasks. Some are locating and picking up pens, some are reaching for soldering irons, some are looking for hidden objects in boxes, and others are placing lids on jars. These seem like everyday tasks, but if you notice, our participants are not relying on their vision to interact with the physical objects. And as a blind person myself, I often use non-visual strategies to interact with the physical world. For example, if I place my wireless earbuds on a table and forget where I put them, I can use my hand to gently sweep across the table to bump into the wireless earbuds, locate them, and grasp them. However, if I were to, say, drop my AirPods on the floor, which I do quite often, then I don't want to sweep my hands across the floor unless it's really, really clean floor. So there are many scenarios like this where it's very valuable to perceive the location and physical characteristics of an object from far away. But if you can't see, how can you perceive objects at a distance? That is the topic of today's talk. In the past, researchers have used sensory substitution to substitute information from different modalities. For example, you can translate visual information into tactile information. The first popular sensory substitution device was invented by Paul Boccarida in 1969, which looks like the tactile television, which is a chair that blind people can sit in, and it features a very large array of mechanical pins that poke different patterns on the user's back so that they can recognize shapes. Since then, sensory substitution devices have evolved into wearable devices using different types of haptic displays. And even some have explored translating visual information into auditory information. If you look at all of these devices, though, you'll notice one interesting thing in common, the glasses. So traditional sensory substitution places the camera to capture the visual information at the eye level to substitute the eye's perspective. This is incredibly valuable for tasks like navigation and avoiding obstacles, but if we go back to those everyday tasks at the beginning, it's really difficult to leverage the eye perspective for these manual tasks. So we thought, if people are already using their hands to interact with objects, what would happen if we enabled the hands themselves to see? We call this work Seeing with the Hands. It was led by Shen Tang, myself, Xuanyo Zed Liu, and Pedro Lopez from the University of Chicago. You can see me wearing our device, which features a wrist-mounted RGB camera and an electrotactile display on the back of the hand. Electrotactile stimulation is a very common form of tactile stimulation that at a high level works by passing a tiny amount of current through two electrodes. And by having an array of these electrodes and switching quickly between these electrodes, we can create patterns that can be felt on the skin. So let's see it in action. So without using my vision or compensatory strategies, those non-visual techniques I was talking about earlier, I'm going to scan this hot boiling kettle, identify the handle, and then pour myself a delicious cup of cup ramen.
Let me talk about how we made this device. We utilize flexible PCBs with 30 electrodes, and with pairwise stimulation, these are enabled using multiplexer and one single source of electrotactile stimulator. And the tactile patterns are generated from RGB camera through a computer vision pipeline, including extracting the contours from the color contrast. And we're curious about these new kinds of seeing can enable what kinds of new interactions for the users. Especially, is it possible to use it without extensive training? So along with Jean, we designed a series of manual tasks aiming to understand how people use these different sensory substitution devices. I'll give you one example. So now here, the participants using the traditional sensory substitution that has a camera on the forehead with tactile pattern on the forehead as well, to find a notebook in the clutter boxes without touching other round objects. So this is how they did it. It looks regular, but it's actually extremely difficult because you really entirely rely on these tactile sensations on your forehead. And this is what they do with the hand device. And participants report that it's much easier to use their hand device to go to different places because it feels very natural to move their hands. And let's look at another example. In this task, we asked the participants to close the lid of the bottle. And with the eye device having camera here on the forehead, this is what this participant did. You can see there's an obvious overshoot happening. And we asked the participant, why is this difficult? And then they mentioned that it can feel sometimes pretty confusing because while reaching for the bottle, the pen can occlude this camera view, the tactile pattern. And compared to the hand device, what you're seeing here, it allows a more smoother pursuit because now we have this first-person view from the hand's perspective. And we also collected other subjective ratings on cognitive load and also performances. We found that the hand's perspective was rated with lower physical load because it feels very natural to move around, to scan around, to understand the real world with the hand, and with comparable performance compared to the eye device. We also found that wide and low vision participants rated lower physical loads from both devices. And here we're not actually arguing that we should just replace the traditional sensory substitution. Instead, we're curious about what if we can use both devices in synergy. So in phase 2 of this study, we let the participants choose which device they want to use. They can use the eye's perspective, they can also use the hand's perspective. And here, we designed an even more challenging task here, which is to find an experimenter in this room. They can be anywhere, having their hand extended, ready to shake hands with the participants. The participants have to rely entirely on these tactile sensations to find a hand. And I will show you a short clip of the study. This is pretty surprising that most participants were able to find a person and shake the hands correctly. And we asked them how they did it. The majority of the participants saying that they like to use the eye device from the eye's perspective to look for an overview, to locate where the experimenter was in the room. And after they locate this room, they wanted to switch to their hand device to look for the extended hands for details. And we'll look even deeper to the usage of these two devices across participants and visualize on this timeline. We found out there are different patterns. Some participants like to switch between these two devices constantly, and some were more like what I mentioned, having the eye device first and then switch to the hand device to look for details. And you can see sometimes they have both devices turning on at the same time. And we also found some participants would prefer to use both devices all the time, mentioning that it is nice to have confirmation from different perspectives. After the study, we collected feedback from our participants about the applications they envisioned, for example, like multitasking, grasping ingredients, and some also envisioned using both devices, eye perspective and hands perspective, at the same time. For example, Jin here is wearing the device on the forehead looking for the road, and he can use the hand device to look for a handrail to walk down the stairs. We think that this opens up a lot of possibilities to explore in the future. For example, what if we can use both hands? It can be more efficient in finding objects or in other tasks. What if we put this tactile perspective onto other body parts, like the feet? What if we explore electrotactile on the feet in our lab? But what if we can render, for example, like stairs and terrains onto the feet? Sensory substitution has drawn most attention from the field of neuroscience and cognitive science, but not as much as in human-computer interaction. And we think that this is inherently about how humans interact with computers, and there are lots left to be explored, including how do we design this interface that is easier to learn and intuitive, and how can we design user experience that is better to have these devices to be used in the real world. And yet, if you have not tried this yet, you're welcome to try this in our interactivity after this session. And thank you, I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks, Jean and Sharon, for the great talk. Maybe one really good question.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, great talk. Just wondering if you tried different kind of orientations. I was just thinking about my own hand and wondering about the touchy side versus the poppy side. Did you try different orientations for the actuators?
So we decided to put this on the back of the hand first because it seems to be intuitive as a direct projection from what the hand is facing.
Okay.
Right, so it feels more intuitive, but we think that there are a lot of design choices that we can explore here. For example, how wide should the camera be seeing, and what's the direction of the camera that will be more intuitive to project on the hand.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks to our presenters again.